I'll back that up. I'll say it's the best podcast. It's the Dopey Podcast. It's the Dopey Podcast. It kicks your podcast in the ass. It's the Dopey Podcast. It's got drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. We don't care about the rest. If it put us up against another podcast, you know we'll pass the test. It's the Dopey Podcast. 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 This episode of the Dopey Podcast is brought to you by Aloe Recovery, located in sunny Southern California, in Silver Lake and Malibu. This treatment center was created by our good friend Bob Forrest, his friend Evan, and their other friend Bob. It was created as a place that addicts could go to get treated with respect. Their tag is compassion, not control, and that means something. An addict that gets treated compassionately might have a better chance of getting better. At least getting better might be more pleasant. And that's another thing that Aloe offers. It's a very comfortable and safe detox. If you're coming off of heroin or benzos or really bad alcohol, you know how dangerous and unpleasant detox can be. So Aloe providing a comfortable detox is a big deal. They also have crazy amenities. They have surfing. They have sound bath meditation. They have sweat lodges. They have some kind of equine therapy. Aloe seems like the place to go. If you're fucked and you're willing to go to Southern California, why not go to Aloe? This episode of Dopey is also brought to you by listeners like you in the Dopey Nation. If you guys like what you hear and you want to contribute, go to www.patreon.com/dopeypodcast and throw $1, throw $2, throw $125 a month if you like, but I don't expect anything. If you don't feel like giving money, it's no big deal. I love that you guys listen more than your money. If you want to get stickers or hats, just Venmo me. If you want a t-shirt or a hoodie, go to dopeypodcast.com. And don't forget, DopeyCon is around the corner. It's going to be a live storytelling event. We want your stories. Submit your best story to dopeypodcast@gmail.com. Keep it under 10 minutes and be prepared to come to New York to tell it. DopeyCon, October 12th. We're going to sell tickets for like $5 just to know who's coming. So I'll let you know when that happens. Enough with the ads already. Here's the show. Hello and welcome to Dopey, the podcast about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. And I'm Dave, and it's the 201st episode, and I've brought in one of my very, very best friends, longtime collaborator and friend, Devan. And not to be confused with Devin Faraci, the TV and film critic, who spells his name Devin. Welcome back, Devan.
Thank you.
And Devan was on Dopey years ago.
It's true.
It was a stormy Tuesday night, and we were on the Lower East Side, and Devan braved the elements and came over to record with me and Chris.
Yeah, it was in your old apartment, your newest old apartment.
Yes.
With Chris, and it was nice.
I bet you didn't realize how big the show would get.
Congratulations on 200. That is amazing.
The funny thing is that, I was like, Devan, you're going to have to listen to the 200th episode to do the show. And he was like, it's almost 3 hours long.
I know. Just the regular hour plus is a lot for me.
Well, but you listened to it.
I did. I listened to the whole thing. I finished it this morning on my way over.
And thoughts. We do a little recap of the 200th. For my money, besides my children, I think the 200th episode of Dopey might be the best thing I ever did.
It's really good.
It's pretty good.
It's really nice. Yeah.
What was your takeaway?
It's amazing that this has happened, that you've managed to create this with Chris and then keep it going so long. First, I mean, Chris was such a driving force to keep that happening every week, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
You will definitely be obsessive enough to keep going, but you need that other person to like keep the mechanicals of it going, to come to you every week to make that kind of thing happen.
Well, I think it's also just to like keep me from doubting it. You know, I think the reason I work with somebody on everything is because I have so many deep-seated doubts. Mm-hmm. And I think to have somebody else be interested, I can be like the wind, they can be the sail, and I can be like the wind in the sails and make them like about it. And then, Sam has been incredibly helpful. He's been a great help to the whole thing, but I did have to figure out a way to create the wind in the sails kind of thing
for yourself. Also, who's the guy who's sending in the stuff, who does all the editing, clippy things?
Well, there's a random guy named Craig who calls himself Worcester from Worcester, Massachusetts, and he was a huge Dopey fan. He's like a deadhead and a fish head. And after Chris died, he just started sending in clips of the show, like funny clips of the show. And he did a series of things called Dopey, Chopped, and Screwed, which were like kind of segments, mostly like 5 or 6 minutes long. Some were even longer. And right after Chris died, kind of every episode I would play an installment of Chopped and Screwed.
Right, yeah, I've heard some of them.
They were long, though.
Right.
And I knew that for the Chrismiss episode that we couldn't use stuff that was so long, so I asked him to do like 1 to 2 minutes, and he just came through with the really good stuff.
They were amazing. So good. It's so powerful to hear the like progression of stuff that way.
Oh, but that was the one thing he did. He was like, Dave, I'll do what you want and give you 1 to 2 minute things, but I want to do this thing called the evolution of Dopey, which was 10 minutes, but it was, you heard that part.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It's amazing.
That thing was so sad. At the end of it, Chris's voice at the end of that thing, troubled me. It was like disturbing.
Yeah.
But so yeah, and Worcester also sent in amazing visual art, visual Dopey art. And the funny thing about that is like he never did any before. He said he learned how to do it for this, and he just sent it in. He's like this fish guy. So a lot of fish always did like bonus art and shit. I mean, I don't know anything about it, but if you go to a little bit, but if you go to fish scene and stuff, right, you'll see shirts with like kind of appropriated things. And he kind of like did that for Dopey, and he did it in a really cool and tasty way. Mm-hmm. So nice. Like, Worcester is great. He's a teacher someplace in Massachusetts. So, and I think me wanting his help has made him want to help a little bit less. Yeah. So who knows what will come from Worcester in the future? But we do.
That was amazing stuff for the 200, though. So thanks.
There are scraps though that I've saved for the 201st. Do you want to hear a little funny Chris?
Yes.
From Worcester that I didn't get to play.
Yes.
Okay. Here, just to set the scene. This is this is something that Chris, basically when we ran out of drug stories, we kind of just wanted to remember like just funny stories. And he came up with this story, which he called Francesca. Of course, he mispronounced it as Francesca as soon as he started telling the story. But that was Chris for you.
So I go look at WhatsApp to communicate with Christina, and I find this old thread from about almost 2 years ago in my WhatsApp thing, and it's from Francesca. And Francesca was an Italian girl that was an aide in the house next to where I used to live in the Berkshires. So she comes over. It's the second time I hang out with her. She's like kind of like, clearly into like Christianity and stuff. And so I bring her upstairs, and I open the door, and I bring her in my room, and it's just this bed. You know what I mean? So it's just going to be us in the bed. And I see her face, and she's like nervous. She's like visibly nervous about this, right? And so I want to calm her down, but she doesn't speak very good English. So what I do is I tap tap my chest and I say, safe. I'm like, safe.
And think, because she can't speak English well, this is funny.
I'm just going to read one more. She says, maybe tomorrow, if you will be tired, maybe we can see Thursday or Friday if you can.
You're such an asshole.
Yeah, just text me.
You're such an asshole. What's wrong with you?
I don't know why it's so funny to me.
The look on your face. Your eyes just went. Your eyes just went pure evil. Your eyes just went total fucking darkness.
It's so funny because I'm probably seeing like a therapist and I'm like, yeah, I met somebody. We're really connecting.
You said that?
No, probably at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you listen. It's like the setup in my mind is so funny, and then you listen to it, and I think the reason that Worcester picked it is because we laugh so hard.
Yeah, it's really funny to hear you both cracking up like that.
Well, the other thing about it is like when it's late at night, it gets funny, you know.
Also, it's funny to picture him like tapping his chest and saying "safe."
The funniest thing to me though is like he thinks it's so funny that people can't text properly in English, and so he laughs and laughs about that, which I love. Now,
can I drink coffee while we're?
Yeah, man.
Sound gross?
I don't know. I mean, I used to eat entire Indian meals,
No, but it sounded all like. You know, it was.
I know. You have to bring that up, though. You know what it's called when somebody reacts badly to somebody eating on a microphone?
What?
Misophonia. So try it out. We'll see how the misophomics react.
I'm not going to eat any of your dad's frozen, defrosted banana bread. But it's early. Dopey Nation, hello. It is early in the morning here in New York City. Morning's not my strong suit. Not my favorite time of the day.
Don't set up a reason that this won't be good.
I'm not. I have nothing to say. I'm not talking about how the episode's going to go. I'm just trying to paint the scene for the people. Though for Dave, mornings are like his time to shine.
But I never get to do the show in the morning,
which is really crazy. Because
it's sad.
It's funny that you record at night so much because you're like on your last legs. It's like there's no gas in the thing. You're often delirious. You would much rather be asleep.
Well, my new substance, I've gone from like opiates and benzos to like sugar and work. You know what I mean? Like work is the latest substance for me. So like this morning
sugar is not a new additional substance for you, I have to say.
No, but in the morning, like I get up at 4:45.
That's very early in the morning.
I get on a train.
Do you set an alarm to do that?
Yes. I get on a train at 5:46, and the whole train ride in, I'm doing work for Katz's or for Dopey, and then I get to work, then I walk,
right,
and then I work. And then I just do that, I have family time when I get home, and then I try to crank out the Dopey at night. But we had an opportunity to do it now.
Yeah. I mean, growing up, Davey would go to sleep, like during, if we were having like a lot of us together, having like hanging out, or I lived with Davey a lot in towards the end of high school. We probably talked about this in the other time.
Don't worry about anything you might have talked about. Yeah, Devan and I have a long and storied history. We became friends probably in 9th grade or 8th grade, and Devan's family had to move to Connecticut.
Yeah, they did, and then I pretty much moved out of my parents' house when I was 16, in between 10th grade and 11th grade. And then 11th and 12th grade, I came back to the city and spent half the week living with my grandma in Coney Island and half the week, living with friends, but like mostly here. Mm-hmm. Davey's parents very kindly officially adopted me as their Thursday night son. And then we would kind of scheme to extend that to typically at least 2 to 3 nights a week.
He was here a lot. Devan was here a lot, and lots of stuff got done. I mean, Devan and I, I don't know, I think I always had big plans and big dreams, but I never understood like how to put any in action until Devan and I had gotten this internship in high school. In our high school, you don't graduate or you graduate in 11th grade, right? You explain this, please.
Well, you don't graduate, but like you finished all your high school requirements by 11th grade. And so by 12th grade, you're just doing electives, and then you have or you can do an internship for credit, right? That seems fair.
So like you have the choice. I don't know. Basically, you can get an internship when you're in your senior year of high school. So Devan and I, we didn't have a plan, but there were what?
Well, so we showed up at the registration, pre-first day of school thing at high school. And we both were supposed to have found something over the summer to hook ourselves up with.
Had we? Do you remember if we had talked about anything?
I think I had to get a summer job. I think I was mostly at my parents' that summer, so I was working up there, and then I don't think I was. We must have talked. It's hard to imagine I was really stayed there that whole summer, and we didn't talk about it. But I think we kept putting it off. But anyway, I remember us showing up and seeing each other in the hall and being like, "Okay, you got anything?" And I'm like, "No, you?" And they're like, "No." And just then, someone in our grade walked past us and saw us and came over to kind of brag, about the sweet internship his family had hooked up for him through a family friend.
Well, his father was a movie editor, a sound editor.
Really?
Yeah, he did Mosquito Coast.
Oh, wow.
He did a bunch of movies, and he had a connection at MTV. And us being incredibly opportunistic, we were like, well, how do we become interns at MTV? Yeah. So he told us, and we got the internship that day.
Yeah.
Only where this guy actually did the stuff he was supposed to do in the internship, which was logging tapes and stuff, we started just bouncing around the office. And that's when my whole designs on success changed. Yeah. Because I was just if we get in front of somebody, all we have to do is talk to them and we could do whatever we want. And I loved MTV.
Yeah.
I was we should be on MTV.
Yeah. Growing up, we didn't have cable in Brooklyn and in where I was in Brooklyn until which was out by Coney Island, Sheepshead Bay over there. We didn't have cable. I didn't have MTV growing up until I was staying with you, basically. We had what the hell was it? There was U68, which was one of the channels on the thing that sometimes would show videos, and I think Video Music Box was on there sometimes, but not regularly. But anyway, when I started sleeping here, Dave would like to have the TV on a lot, to go to sleep too often, and just to have it. And MTV was on most, probably, right?
I was very, very interested in MTV. When we were kids, MTV was pretty good, though. There was a lot of videos. It was the time of Yo MTV Raps. It was a good time to be interested in MTV. 120 Minutes. Mm-hmm. It was pre-bad reality shows, and music videos were still pretty great.
Yeah.
And even before that, they were better. So when we had the opportunity to be there, and also it was just before all that VH1 stuff was happening. I was obsessed with MTV as just rock and roll on TV, and just hip hop and the culture, and just I liked it.
Yeah.
And so we basically started bouncing around that office.
Right. So we were working at this. The internship was at this news magazine show. It
was a high school magazine show called Like We Care.
Yeah, and it was at the subset of Viacom's major office, not with all the main MTV people. It was up by Columbus Circle, closer to, for people who would know the map.
Nobody knows
the city.
That. Nobody needs to know that.
But basically it was a 15 block walk down to
the real one.
The tower where all the main MTV stuff was happening. And they needed people to bring back and forth
tapes,
cassette tapes, big, but bigger than usual size tapes, weren't they?
Yeah, they're 1/4-inch tapes.
So we immediately
or something else
volunteered for that
because we didn't want to sit around and log tapes, and because we wanted to go to that place.
We wanted to go and walk around,
and we would eat and stuff.
Yeah, well, they would give us they would give us 2 tokens. They would give us tokens to take the train for there and back, even though it was really close. So we would pocket the tokens.
We'd eat pizza or something.
And we'd stop and change the tokens at the arcade on the way for quarters, and then we'd use some of the quarters to play video games and some of them to buy like pizza or something on the, in between. And then we'd go to the MTV and we'd just like walk around and try and meet people and take the like free CDs that were free CDs, the stacks of like promo CDs that were on every desk all around.
And it worked out. And we met, this is going to be before most of the Dopey Nation's time, but we wound up meeting Kurt Loder and, like, hanging out with him. He would smoke weed and listen to, like, Burning Spear, and we'd walk in and hang out and feel cool. It was cool.
Mm-hmm. Why are we telling this story, though?
I don't know.
Okay.
Right. I don't know.
Okay.
But I think I wanted to tell the story because it's, number one, it's, like, a great origin story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and, I mean, like...
It's not a Dopey story. It was, like, our... high school drug use was not really attached to our MTV. I mean, we had this crazy MTV like roller coaster ride that is like the next part of the story is especially as high school seniors was crazy. The rise and fall all in this one like year, but it doesn't coincide with like with any like high school.
Well, I don't think there was much high school drug use at all, period.
It's true.
You know, the high school drug use was very, very, very limited. You know, I've talked about it. I smoked weed in senior year. I think you smoked weed before that. And actually our drug use actually started at the same time. Or had you done acid before?
No, I had not. So also, I mean, my parents were stoners through most of my childhood. They were old hippies. And I think that made me start smoking pot later than others. I feel like that was because there were people, especially like when I met people out in the suburbs who were like smoking to be cool, or like they were like clearly presenting themselves as cooler because they were smoking, and I was like, well, that's like what my parents.
Well, that's also
doing.
why you actually didn't become a stoner. I think. I mean, I'm convinced that people who have parents that are total stoners rarely become stoners. But we didn't tell the point of the MTV story.
Okay.
The point of the MTV story was that they put us on MTV. We became little guys on MTV, and it was cool. That's the whole story, basically, right?
Well, kind of. It is. I guess so. But it's that for that moment. I mean, and obviously, I think like blowing smoke up people's asses is like a hallmark of like a lot of that world. But there was, at that time, they were telling us, there was that guy who was telling us, you are the future of MTV. They used our clips for their annual like Viacom stockholders meeting that year in Key West or wherever.
The whole thing was very troubling, to be honest with you. We would sit with like the CEO of MTV and he would tell us that. It was very troubling. And we were 17 and it really definitely went to my head, you know, big time. Because it was all I had wanted. And we became on-air personalities for one episode. They had planned shooting a bunch of other stuff. And
we did the Toy Fair.
Yeah.
We did Slaughter.
Oh,
rode in that Slaughter, their record release.
That's a little bit of a Dopey story because I think I don't know why, but Devan and I went to hang out with Slaughter. I totally forgot about it because it made me so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We had to get to a hotel near Penn Station.
Sneezing up a storm in the other room.
No, they don't hear that.
Okay.
We went to meet Slaughter at a hotel. Yes, he's fine.
All right.
We went to meet Slaughter at a hotel near Penn Station early in the morning, and like we actually didn't like Slaughter, so like I didn't want to go because it just seemed like such a bad thing to go. And if you don't know, Slaughter was a big hair metal band in the 80s, and they had a song called Up All Night, Sleep All Day, and I didn't like them, and I didn't like that scene. I didn't want to do it. Well,
that's why the Like We Care people thought it was funny to send us to do it because we weren't.
But that's not really funny,
of course. Their sensibility was not.
And we went there and we had to hang out with Slaughter and think it was cool. And I think it was also pretty uncomfortable for Slaughter. frankly. Mm-hmm. And we wound up in a limo with Slaughter, but we sat on the floor of the limo because there were so many people in the bands that sat in the limo.
Right,
and
plus the cameras.
So we sat on the floor of the limo, and sitting in the limo made me so nauseous that when we went to a record signing in New Jersey, and when we got out of the limo, I threw up in the street. And it was like, the reason it's such a dopey story is because after, I became addicted to opiates, I was throwing up everywhere. And when I would feel that insane nausea, I would always think of Slaughter.
Nice.
Not to mention Slaughter in general just makes me nauseous. The whole thing was just like, it was so weird. And then, we hosted this segment at a toy show. And
so they screen tested us. First they did we did something in the studio. We did 3 little segments, and they were like, we're just going to show it to screen testers. I don't know what those are.
And if you watch that screen test, it was terrible.
Have you ever seen it?
Yes.
Recently?
No, but it burned an embarrassing hole in my brain.
No, yeah. And then they were like, okay, we got back great reviews from the screen test. We're going to do 2 episodes on live, and we're going to see what feedback we get back from that. And they aired those 2 segments. And then they said, all right, that was great. That went really well. You're next. We're booking 3 more segments for you. We're booking
Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson at Madison Square Garden for White Men Can't
on
Jump.
the court of Madison Square Garden with an yet to be named member of the Knicks.
Yeah.
Opening day at Yankee Stadium in the dugout.
I don't remember the third one.
The third was Big Audio Dynamite. And Public Image Limited concert, and then to interview Mick Jones and Johnny Rotten afterwards.
Yeah, that would have been pretty crazy. Yeah, it fucked our heads up pretty bad. Yeah. And then we're ready to do all this stuff. I'm certain in my mind that it's all going to happen. Just like the whole thing.
You were already like, we can't go to college next year. My dad was like, it's like, if you take a year off from college, you receive no financial support from our family, if you choose to go to college later. He's like, you're either going to college right away or you're not getting a penny from us.
Right.
I was like, oh, okay.
And then I was like,
you're like, we got to do it. What are we going to do? You're not going to do this?
But in my mind, it had already happened. We had already made it big. We were rich and famous, and, fucking Mick Jones and Johnny Lydon and the whole thing, was happening. And then we show up one day, and the show...
It's like days before the first one was going to happen, which I think was opening day.
Yeah. It was the spring, and we went to high school on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and MTV was on 57th Street and Broadway.
But meanwhile, on a side note, during that time, we get busted by our school for...
No, it wasn't yet.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
I think so.
Continue. This is the biggest.
It was spring already, and we had to take all those extra classes because of this.
No,
and that was
it was at the end of the year.
No.
But people don't like it when I quibble about details that they don't know about. Okay. So I don't want to quibble about details.
But you're wrong.
Okay. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
Okay.
So. But it also doesn't. The story doesn't work as good that way.
Well, yeah, it's because because that's the good part, is that this is all going to happen. But the bad part was we had to turn in every week the stupid ICY log, intercollege year log, every week of what we learned at our internship that year, and then we were supposed to get our supervisor's signature on it. And we would always wait till Friday morning to do it, sitting outside of school, and then we'd sign the guy's name because we knew he wouldn't care.
So did we forge every signature, or didn't? I think the story that I remember was that at the end of the thing, you have to turn in your whole ICY log, and we had done none of it. So we did the whole thing the night before, and he's supposed to sign the top of it, right. And I was like. This is the way I remember the story. Right. I said, I'm going to go over there and get his signature. And you said, well, I'm not going to go. I'm just going to forge the signature. And I said, you think that's a good idea? And you said, yeah, it's no big deal. So we forged the signature.
I don't know if this is true, but I'm willing to accept full responsibility because that's funny.
And we handed them in. And then for some reason, I guess they had to follow up with the supervisor.
No, it's because that person hated you in the ICY office. That woman.
Everybody loved me.
It's not true.
Are you kidding me?
And the principal hated both of us. So anyway, they call up the guy. He's like, oh, I didn't sign anything because he just wants to mess with us.
That's not true. I don't believe that either. The guy didn't. He said I didn't sign it because he didn't sign it. He was like he was a little fucking weirdo too.
He was, but then he told us.
He was a weird Yes fan. He had weird Yes art on his walls. He had this pristine psychedelic bullshit on his wall, which is how you know he's a weirdo. Right. And then they were like, "So did you sign this thing?" And he was like, "No, I didn't sign it." And then he said he was fucking with us, but he wasn't.
Okay,
because he was a piece of shit. Sorry, Charlie, whatever your name is. But this dude...
Charlie, it's true, it was Charlie.
His name was Charlie Singer, if you guys want to look him up. He was responsible for me going to summer school that year.
But anyway, you had to go to summer school.
Although I did forge the signature, so maybe I was actually responsible in the end.
I had to take all these extra... the reason I know it was before the end is because I had to take all these extra classes. We both had to take all these extra classes. They wouldn't give us credit for the internship anymore.
But I had failed
you
Spanish.
had failed that class sometime before Spanish. So,
which ironically I'm nearly fluent in now.
Would you say that's true?
No. Anyway, I would say I'm fluent in restaurant Spanish.
That's good.
And so,
have you ever told Mr. Diaz that?
Maybe.
Right.
But hold on for a second, Dad. This is my dad's favorite fucking story, by the way.
Why? Which part? What?
You'll see. Right. Dad. Hello. I don't want you, but it's to not have you on this part of the story. We're telling the story of MTV.
Oh, yeah.
And this is your favorite story. This is the story that my dad thinks defines my life.
Right.
So lean forward. Come close.
When Devan screws up, he doesn't get into trouble. When Davey screws up, he winds up having to go to summer school and change his whole life around. But... what the heck?
I didn't have to go to summer school, but I did have to take extra classes. Interestingly, when I graduated college, I also ended up scrambling that last semester there and had to take extra classes because I got kicked out of something.
The really fucked up vindictive piece.
I need to think about that.
The really fucked up vindictive piece was that the principal not only, I had to, failed us on this thing, and you had to take an extra class that year, and I had to go to summer school. But I was in a play. I was directing a play, and he said, well, you can still direct the play, but I'm taking your name off the program. And that was my punishment. Now, what do you have to say, Dad? Welcome back to the show. Fan favorite, Alan.
Yeah, well, fan favorite, but I thought you didn't want me back here now. But in any case,
you're trying to elicit the fans for more guilt support.
Well, I remember going to talk to the guidance counselor, and I was defending you and screaming and yelling at the guidance counselor, and you said, "Dad, calm down, because I was because I thought they wouldn't let you graduate.
They did. They
did. And so that calmed me down that you did graduate with everybody. Yeah. That's a long time ago.
Is that all you remember from the story?
I remember being embarrassed that I was getting so angry at the guidance counselor, and it wasn't her fault about anything. I mean,
maybe it was her fault. Maybe it wasn't my fault at all. Maybe she forged the signature.
No, it was your fault for sure.
Anything else you want to say?
No, you're supposed to get rid of me now.
No, you okay? You were sneezing a lot in there.
Yeah. No, I'm fine.
All right. Thank you for. Right. Oh, no. The other point was you always made was everybody else can get away with X, Y, and Z, and I'm talking about like Devan did drugs and he didn't become a drug addict. X, Y, and Z, blah 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 blah. But you always said that I couldn't.
No, that's true. Yeah, that the things that David did, everybody else did, but they did not wind up in the problem that David did. But I guess you're aware of it now, so you know. You're not aware of it now.
I'm aware of it.
I mean, in terms of making wise decisions. That's the bottom line. Making wise decisions.
Don't you want to say anything about how great the 200th episode was?
Oh yeah, it was really great. But how many toodles were at the end? 143 toodles.
I think it was 142 toodles.
Did you count the toodles?
I think it was actually, I don't remember him if he said toodles on the first episode or not. Maybe he did. I don't remember. But it was, It's funny, the Toodles thing, when Worcester sent me these clips, and I listened to the clips, and the clips were very emotional for me to listen to. When I listened to the Toodles clip, I was actually leaving this apartment and going to work. And I think I left the door downstairs, and I said, oh, fucking Toodles, is what I was thinking. And I hit Toodles, and I knew that it was going to be a series of Toodles. And at 2 minutes, I'm like, this is pretty funny. And then at 2.5 minutes, I'm like, oh my God, it's still going. And then at 2 minutes and 45 seconds, I said, well, I'll use 2 minutes of it, and I'll cut it at 2 minutes. And then I kept listening, and I said, wow, this is just way too long to use. And then I'll cut it. I was like of two minds with it. And then when it got to the end, and I heard the last one, I remember that the last one was from the last episode, and it was the episode where Chris and I were Skyping, and Chris was obviously high, and I could hear it in his voice, and the significance of it actually being the last time he said the word Toodles made me say, I'm going to keep the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And I also, I listened to that probably 4 or 5 times, so that's like 30 minutes of Toodles, and I hated fucking Toodles. But in the end, I knew that it was great, and that even if it was annoying to anybody, it was necessary.
Yeah, I think it was important to play the whole thing. I think it's meaningful. Also, you're already at 2 hours and 40-something minutes,
Exactly.
30 seconds of important Toodles.
Dad, what are you looking at?
No, I was
He's
thinking,
fucking gazing into the distance here.
Did he use a different Toodle from each episode? I mean, was it all 142 separate ones, or did he repeat some of them? Well, you don't have no clue.
How could I possibly know? It was 142 different Toodles.
That can be on your podcast, Alan. You can interview Worcester about how many Toodles there actually were.
The after Dopey party.
There's not going to be any Alan podcast. Don't worry about that.
Even
though McDonald's is going to have a podcast, and probably Burger King is going to have a podcast, all of a sudden podcasting is big business now.
I wanted to do a podcast from Cats called The Podcats. Huh? And
another brilliant name.
Did you hear all the names of so there was Devan's not in the Dopey Nation group, God bless him, but the Dopey Nation group is literally obsessed with my father. Okay, there's a post in the Dopey Nation group. If Alan does a spin-off podcast, what should the title be? Okay, and then you have Fetching with Alan. Then you have Jew Crazy, which is my favorite, and then the most clever one is Al-Anon.
Yeah. Was that clever?
That's really good.
Yeah, well, Senior Dope wasn't so great.
Senior Dope?
Senior.
Oh, but Senior Dope could be great, because it's a play on senior. You're like Mr. Senior Dope, and you're also the Senior Dope.
They said Senior Dope, not Senior Dope.
Wow, good. It's good. It's good that they keep you on your toes. Anyway, thank you for coming in.
Okay, stay strong, Dopey Nation.
There you go. Nice appearance from my dad. And then the other thing, in the end, we got caught from the MTV thing.
So we got caught, but we're like, all right, we can't get credit for doing this anymore, but we're still doing it. It's still on the rise. They're using us in their shareholder meetings. We're about to have all these episodes. And do all these amazing things. That it's crazy to have done those 3 things would have been amazing. And a couple of days before opening day at Yankee Stadium, we walk in, we roll into the office, all happy, and what greets us.
I really felt like I was one of the Beastie Boys at that point. I remember I was I'm wearing shoes without shoelaces and fucking dragging my scarves. I was just a mess. I was like a pre-junkie. I had a style that was just a total mess. I would just often be on the ground. My clothes would be that wasn't the Beastie Boys style. I felt full of myself as though I was one of the Beastie Boys, but I had a very pre-junkie.
I always looked like my least favorite member of the Beastie Boys. I had
Devan had
uncanny resemblance too.
Devan has an uncanny resemblance to Mike D,
especially when I was younger.
No, he's just a little more craggy than you now, right. But it's still
no offense, Mike D, when you listen to this, that you were my least favorite member, but you were.
I met Mike D at Katz's, and I told him how much I admired him. And I think when I met Ad Rock at Katz's too, and I also told him, and I feel like when I meet people that I really admire that aren't drug addicts, it's hard for me to... I met Elvis Costello, too. It's hard for me to tell them about Dopey.
Right.
But when Mike D left Katz's and his family is still there, and I'm killing myself that I didn't mention Dopey because Mike D has some big radio show in Hawaii.
Wow.
So I take a Dopey card and I give it to his like his stepfather or some father figure in his life. And I said, could you give this to Mike D? And I don't know. So Mike D might actually be listening.
Well, I've come around on Mike D, I have to say, because someone brought me to their like Brooklyn thing for that big book that they did last year.
Yes.
And it was really endearing.
Oh man, I mean,
he was great.
Mike D, like
Both of them were great. And it was moving.
I have a friend who's like knew the Beastie Boys and stuff, and he always said that Mike D was actually the nice Beastie Boy, and that he just gets a bad rap because of whatever.
Right.
Whatever.
Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. So we roll in there, and immediately, like opening the door, you feel like there's the vibe. You just, even before you could see anything, you could feel like something was wrong. And then as like your eyes like tune in to what's going on, there's like weeping.
I don't remember
people
that at
putting
all.
stuff into boxes. There are people crying and people unboxing their shit.
What I remember, one thing that it was also like the funny thing about MTV, when we got to MTV in the first place, it was like, oh, you're at MTV, blah, 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 blah. And then they take us to the kitchen, and in the kitchen is a free soda machine. And me and Devan are like, free soda? This is the best thing ever. And I remember thinking to myself, if nothing else, you could have free soda all day. And what an amazing thing. And I think we got there, in my recollection, we get there, the door's locked. And there's a note on the door that says, like we're canceled, instead of like we care. And then I go to the kitchen and the soda machine is gone. And I was like, this is terrible. That's my memory of it. But
so the show was canceled right before we do other things. So we freak out and run to the people who could, who were hooking up our situation. We're like, what? But what about the future of MTV? And they were like, don't worry, it's going to be fine. We're still going to use you. We're not going to use you for these segments because the show is canceled. But this summer, and this is how old we are, this summer is the Barcelona Olympics. So it was 1992. This summer's the Barcelona Olympics. We're going to send you and Dave to Europe a month before, and you are going to make your way, and like with a very small amount of like money to live on, enough for that you'll be okay, but not enough to live big. And you're going to make your way as our send us like video dispatch things on your way to the Olympics, and then be one of our like coverage people at the Olympics.
I don't remember that at all either. And so what happened?
Okay.
So what happened?
That didn't happen.
But why not?
They just started eventually ghosting us. It was just like, because they move on to the next big thing.
Right. I think the next big thing was Beavis and Butthead, to be honest with you.
That's much
It was cheaper for them,
to replace that.
They could really control those guys easier than they can control us.
Yep.
So that was the MTV story. And I don't know, like, if there's any real reason to have that on the show, but I think it's a pretty crazy story. And it was a dream deferred, a dream denied. And then years later,
there are the addendums.
Well, there were many addendums.
Because we kept trying to capitalize. We're like, we can still capitalize on our connections there.
Well, every
summer,
but I got
in college.
But I actually got to capitalize on it eventually. It was like for the first couple.
On a side note, capitalize. It's a shitty word.
Why?
Because capitalism is like it's bad. It means like you're doing bad things.
No, it doesn't.
The situation. Selfish.
I feel
selfishness.
No. What are you talking about? It was opportunistic. How's that?
Yeah. No. I guess it is. But yeah, sure. Go on.
I don't want to get down to a socioeconomic political conversation about the merits or
I'm going to drink more coffee. It's early in the morning
or non-merits of capitalism. But we did try to capitalize on it. In the end, I ran into the CEO. I was a food server on World Yacht. And the CEO of MTV showed up there, or maybe it was the CEO of Viacom, and it was very embarrassing. And many years later, I kept reaching out until I had a different TV show, and they had me.
Because he was like, "Oh, it's Dave of Dave and Dev or Dev and Dave."
It was not good, and when I went back, they hired me on MTV2. But when they hired me back at MTV2, and I've told this story. I presented myself as a real producer, and I went back to work.
Were you already on heroin at that point?
Yeah, I was totally full-on junkie. I had lost my other job for going to detox, and I was shooting dope. And I was clean when I got the job, though, because I knew that I was in trouble. And I got this job at MTV2, which was actually in another different MTV Viacom building. But it was on the 57th floor. And as soon as I got my first check, like it was like some of the biggest checks I ever got in my life. And I got my first check, and I was like, fuck this, I'm going to get dope. And I got a bunch of dope, and I was shooting up, and I was, I think I was making like $1,100 a week or something, and my rent was $300 a month, and I still went broke, and I still couldn't keep up with it. But the highlight was in the very beginning. I was making a show for MTV2, and I was on like the 57th floor, and I had my own office, and I would shoot heroin in my own office, and the office faced Central Park South. Wow. And I thought to myself, this is it. Like in my mind, I was Miles Davis at that moment, which descended into like me getting my nose broken, helping out my neighbor, and
that's a good one.
And fucking it all up. And on the last day, I went in on a Saturday, and all those promotional CDs that Devan was talking about, it was a Saturday. I went around 3 floors of the MTV2 building with shopping bags, and I stole the CDs off every person's desk.
Right.
I just went around.
All of them.
Yeah. From desk to desk, I left with like hands and hands and hands of shopping bags, like discographies of Miles Davis and John Lennon, whatever, whatever, the great CDs. And I went straight to St. Mark's, and I sold all of them. I probably got $600, and I spent that, in a day or 2 days. So like that was the end of my MTV career, which started so promisingly and so innocently. It's funny, it's weird. Let's get to a Dopey story. What do you say?
Yeah.
So this is from this guy, Mick, this English guy. He sent an amazing story about his journey to Hong Kong and a bunch of like terrible things that happened. And this is the follow-up about what happened when he actually got there. It's Mick. You ready?
Ready.
Mick is a great Dopey participant and fan, and new like sort of pen pal of mine. So, hey Mick, I'm sorry I didn't play your 200th thing. Maybe I'll play it now. But here's your voicemail.
Hello, Dave. Hello, Dopey Nation. I hope everyone's well. I had a brief email chat with Dave the other day, and he said that a few people would mention they might like to hear a follow-up to my story of when I got detained in Hong Kong, which is a surprise to me because I thought I did a train wreck of a job of sending a voicemail, and it was terrible. I thought, but anyway, I thought fair enough. I'll see what I can do. So, so me and my mate Rob had been arrested and detained in Hong Kong. We'd been released on bail with the proviso, obviously, to appear in court in Hong Kong a couple of weeks following. So we're back at the airport, managed to get our baggage, got the drugs out of my bum by this point, obviously, and we got ourselves well. So I went out and talked to a taxi driver and said, look, where's the best cheap place to stay? So he pointed us towards Kowloon, so we hopped on the train. And off we went to Kowloon. We got off, booked into a backpackers, which was about 14 floors up on this building that consisted of dodgy businesses selling knockoff Hugo Boss suits and fucking stolen electronics and God knows what else. But it was cheap. And there was a whole lot of lockers there, big lockers where you could lock stuff up. So we went to a DIY shop and bought a big butty fucking padlock and locked some stuff up and dumped off all our bags. Had a fix in the room, which was tiny but was all right, for a fact that it cost about, I think it was the equivalent of about, it was like $10 a night or something, and had a bathroom as well. So that was cool. So we went straight down the local pubs and that in Kowloon, and thought we'd check out the local scene. So we found drugs pretty quick, I think. Second pub we went in, we bought some hash. And the guy who we bought the hash off, I asked him, where can we get something stronger? And he told us this. I can't remember now. It's sort of all a bit vague, but I remember we ended up in another pub, which was sort of like a pool snooker club sort of place. And I got a connect there for heroin. There's an Indian, half Chinese guy. I can't remember. It's called Nabeen, was his name, and he told us. He lived in a building, the next building over, well, a couple buildings over from where we were staying, in Kowloon, and he said he could hook us up later. He wasn't a dealer, but he was into it, so he was going to jack us up later. Now, the area we were staying in Hong Kong is part of what used to be called the Walled City. Now, that had been partly demolished by the time we were there, but at one point this was the most densely populated place on Earth. It was just a total ghetto full of opium dens, cocaine parlours and illegal businesses, doing dodgy, like I said, stolen and dodgy electronics and dodgy tailors selling knockoff Calvin Klein and Hugo Boss suits, all this sort of thing. So this place was something else. Like I'm pretty well travelled, but I've never seen it anywhere like this part of Kowloon. It was dangerous, and it was full of drugs and full of criminals, and it was fucking awesome. If you know what I mean. Relative to the mindset I was in at the time, it was awesome anyway. So we met Nabeen later at his apartment, for want of a better word, which was basically just two little rooms connected together with a wet room, bathroom, shower, and he hooked us up, and we bought what was the equivalent of about a gram of heroin for what would have worked out to be about $30 and now I had a raging dope habit at the time. I mean, a huge dope habit, because I had a decent income, and I was just a horrible addict, so I was spending it all on drugs. So I had a big habit, and I took one hit of this stuff, which was your classic China White, and it just knocked me on my ass. This dope was so pure, there was no filtration or heating required. You could literally just put the powdered heroin straight in the barrel of the syringe, shake it with cold water, and inject it. And it took me about 3 hours to do my shoelaces up and leave because I was so bounced. So so we bounced around Hong Kong. We got in a bit of trouble, got in a couple of fights in a bar in a place called Wan Chai, and we ran from the police. There was an American aircraft carrier docked while we were staying in Hong Kong, so we got into playing pool with all the US sailors. So that was a fucking good night. That was in an underground bar called the Kangaroo Bar in Wan Chai, which is between Kowloon and Tsim Chow Shoi, which was another one of the areas we were in. So that was fucking cool. We moved after a while. We found a cheaper place near Wan Chai, so we stayed in a backpackers there, and then we got Nabeen's mate, who we'd been buying heroin off. He came to the room, and he OD'd in our room, and I was just freaking out. This guy, I was so sure he was dead, and the room had a window in it, but it opened into the inside of the building down a giant sort of like chimney chute thing that went straight down the middle of the building. And I was so off my face, and so was my mate Rob. We were going to chuck him out the window. That was a plan at the time. When we dragged him, I was so sure he was dead, and we dragged him across and we hoofed him up onto the bed, which was by the window. And just as we were getting ready to lift him, the guy woke up. I was like, oh my God, what is wrong with me? I'm about to chuck this guy out the window, and he's fuck. Anyway, so thank God he wasn't dead. And a whole load of other things happened. I lost a phone number for the Connect while I was over there. Nabeen, I lost his phone number, so I got the taxi back from Wan Chai to Kowloon, and I'm just walking. This is, skinny little English boy, 20 odd years old, walking around this ghetto building in Hong Kong, and I've got no number. I just remembered roughly which floor he lived on. It was either the 19th or 20th floor. I'm just walking around shouting, Nabeen, Nabeen. And there's all these crazy fucking little Chinese fellas with tattoos and huge scars on their faces and missing eyes and fucking Bowie knives on their belt, just fucking looking at me. And anyway, eventually I found him somehow. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and got what I needed. So, but anyway, yeah, we went to court and we were acquitted of the charges. We were fined for the break. We were fined for the smoking on the plane and that, and fined for something. The fine was roughly the equivalent of the bail money we'd paid. So eventually we burnt out, and I'd lost my bank card and all sorts of stupid shit, blackouts, and a lot of it's a blur. And I ended up phoning my dad, and he wired us the money for a flight. So after 6 weeks of just total insanity in Hong Kong, we flew back to London, and that was the end of that. So that's the rest of my Hong Kong dopey story, I suppose. There's a whole lot of other shit that happened while I was there, but it's all a bit vague amongst the blackouts and God knows what else. But anyways, thanks for listening, everybody. Love you all. Stay strong. Thank you, Dave. I'll see if I send you another one day. Thank you.
So there's Mick. That's a fucking dope. I mean, we have our stupid story about MTV.
That's amazing.
And then you have this.
He almost threw someone out the window who was alive.
You know, that echoes one of the original dopey stories. Like, I don't remember if it was a voicemail. It was Chris's favorite. It was from this Australian guy named Maurice, who somebody OD'd, a guy named Ivan, and he thought it was a dead body, and he put him in a phone booth.
The phone booth, I remember that.
That was like Chris's favorite one. And what a weird sort of caveat to that story was, after Chris died, first of all, Mick, thank you for the dopey story. Fucking killer dopey story. Thank you for turning our high school memory episode into a dopey episode, which is
Thanks,
great.
Mick.
Not that I don't love Devan being on the show. It makes me very happy.
He made me come here at early morning hours.
I didn't make you come. You said, I'm listening to the show. It's great. I'm going to come. Well, you didn't have to do it.
Didn't I?
No, you didn't have to do it.
I mean, Dopey Nation, the text, Dave likes to play it a little cool sometimes in front of you. But, the lead up to making sure you gotta be here. This is the time. This is when it has to happen.
Well, that's true.
Okay.
However,
I mean, also, I'm really happy to be here. I'm touched to be here. I'm honored to be here right after 200 in the 201st episode, the first of your next 200. I appreciate being here too.
I totally appreciate that too. I know I pressure people to do a lot of things. But people never have to do what I pressure them into doing. I mean, come on, you know that. Now, the thing about that dopey story is it's so funny, like kind of pre-cell phones, or maybe not even pre-cell phones. If you're sick and you get some connect and you don't keep the number, like, what the fuck do you do? I feel like I've been in kind of situations similar to Mick's situation, wandering around buildings that I've never been in to find the dope, because it's like a needle in a haystack in the first place. And how do you find a needle in a haystack twice is the question.
Right, and there's a clock ticking.
Another thing that it made me think of, like, once in a while I have these dope dreams, where I'm looking for dope, or I find dope, or I get dope and I put it in my pocket and I can't use it. Last night I had these dreams about bud, that I was ready to smoke pot again. And there were people at my job selling bud, and they were selling a bunch of like dank indica and sativa, and I was trying to choose what I wanted, but I hadn't smoked in so long that I'm trying to figure it out, and I wound up with bud that I didn't want, but then I remembered I had gotten the good bud too. That was the whole dream.
Wow.
And then in the morning when I woke up, and I was excited to meet Devan this morning at my dad's, that it occurred to me that after I stopped smoking weed, I gave all of my bud to Devan. You remember that?
Yeah.
Do you remember? I think I called you the day I got clean.
Yeah.
And I said, you got to come over and take all this bud. right? Do you remember it?
Yeah. I mean, some of it was like decrepit old stuff that was like hidden up in your like top cabinet, but some was not.
No,
then there's also that like wax, and there was all that you had collected all this stuff.
Well, it was the end of a glorious weed collection with a huge jar of one strain and then like 6 jars of other strains, and some were like more decrepit because I had saved them because I wanted to taste them one last time. Like it was like that was my fantasy, was to have a spice rack of different strains of weed, and I actually did it.
Yeah.
And then I gave all of the edibles to this dude at work, and I gave all the bud to you. And how long do you think it lasted you?
Probably a while. That's the thing. I smoke very small amounts, and it over longer periods of time. So like usually if I get too much, then it gets old before I get to it. It's
by the time you smoke it, it tastes like
amounts
shit
from people. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Did any of it go bad?
Yeah, probably, for sure. Yeah.
What a sad thing. And what were you going to say?
Just that I'm really happy that you're alive, that you've made it back. There were definitely a lot of times. Just when you're talking about like walking and looking, for dope, there just were so many. Like when I was on my way over here, Rach was like, "What are you going to talk about?" Like all of the many, many phone calls you had after each of Davy's relapses, where like for hours you're like trying to like talk him into like trying again and like coming back to life.
What do you remember about that?
I don't remember that many of those phone calls, but
what I remember is like because somebody at work actually said to me, if you're an addict and somebody says to you, "Are you going to get clean?" What do you say? And I feel like I would say a yes, but then just not do it. But I feel like
I think you would weep and like we would talk, and then then you would like get all like riled up about
not doing it.
Yeah.
Like I don't remember weeping. I just remember saying I wasn't going to do it, that it wasn't going to happen. Like one thing about me is like I would lie to get money, and I would lie about not working, and I would lie about this. But I was always pretty like I don't know what the word is, but I was pretty honest about not wanting to stop.
Yeah.
I remember
you were into the habit, but also there were times when you would come out of it as well.
Like I'd have a day clean and want to hold on to it. Mm-hmm. Oh, you know what? I don't know if we told this story when you were on last time, was the ibogaine story.
Oh, yeah. I thought about that last week when I was thinking about coming to do this. Also, on a side note, it's really funny to be also just like, funny, I don't know, but like walking here to your dad's house off the train, being in like the right train car to get out at the exit right by your dad's and come here. I mean, it taps into so many old memories of coming here. And then also memories of you getting me to come to meet you when you were a junkie. And then like half of those times you would then like you wouldn't be there. You'd be like, come, and like there were so many times you'd be like, meet me here, meet me there, and like I would come and you wouldn't be there.
I also got you to give me money a few times, which is unlike you, which was very unlike you to be able to give me money.
Yeah, I usually don't have extra money, but you were scrapping.
But to speak with total honesty, it's been a long time. I haven't done drugs in 4 years. I haven't done heroin in 8 years.
Yeah.
How long? Like, how much do these kinds of things pop into your head? We've had a pretty. I actually, when Linda left me, I made the decision to move to the Lower East Side for 2 reasons, or maybe 3 reasons. One was because it was right near where I worked. 2 was because the apartments there were exactly like the apartments I grew up in, and I couldn't resist that. And the third, maybe most important, was it was a stone's throw from where Devan lived. So, like, we hadn't hung out in, like, a fucking decade, basically.
Mm-hmm. Except for, like, bursts when you would come in or,
Right, but I even remember when I came back and we started hanging out, it was like... It was weird. Mm-hmm. Like I would meet you and your daughter at a playground, and it was weird because like she was like 2, and you would be pushing her on the swing, and you hadn't seen me in like fucking ever, and it was like a little weird. Yeah. And it took a little bit of time to get back into the swing.
Yeah.
So now when you're sitting here talking about the bad memories, how fresh are they in your head?
Not that fresh, but there was something about
right.
Well, there was something about coming at like a weird time for me, to meet you and have it be here.
Like off kilter and kind of thing.
And I was like, oh yeah, I know this feeling.
Right, having to meet me in a situation where you don't want to. And, like, that's another thing. Like, you can say that I made you come here because I did make you go to those places in the past. Yeah. I don't think that this is one of those situations.
No, and I love you and I love Dopey. That, I obviously don't listen all the time, but, like, it's amazing. It's amazing that Dopey Nation's there and that this podcast is what it is.
Let's listen. There's a couple things that I didn't get to from the 200th. So there's a bunch of voicemails that I stupidly didn't play from fans in the Dopey Nation. And, of course, them being in the Dopey Nation, I've heard from them, and they're upset that I didn't play them. So I'm going to play a couple of messages from the 200th now. You excited?
Yes.
Are you sitting on the edge of your seat?
Look,
here we go. We're going to start with Dopey superfan Randy, who used to attribute his whole sobriety to Dopey. You ready? Yeah, I think he's gotten his shit together a little bit. Yeah, this dude actually took me and Chris out to a steak dinner.
Oh, I remember when that happened.
In like the first like 6 months of the show. He's a statistician for the NHL, and he fucking has a lot of beliefs about the show. He's incredibly excited about DopeyCon, by the way. Are you excited about DopeyCon?
Very.
Are you going to come? October 12th. 18th Street.
October 12th.
18th Street, 8 o'clock at night.
What day of the week is that?
Saturday.
Saturday, October 12th.
Yes.
I'll try.
Saturday, October 12th.
What time?
8 o'clock.
At night.
Why wouldn't you come?
If I'm not in the city for something, if I'm like visiting my mom or something.
Okay, so if you're not...
If I'm here, I'll be there. How about that?
That's more like it.
All right.
And here's Randy and a few more stragglers that I just didn't get to because it was so late at night for the Dopey 200th. You know, I stayed up till 3:30 in the morning that night to finish...
your wake-up time.
I know, to finish the Chrismiss episode.
It's amazing.
I know. A lot of work. It was
really good.
Yeah, it was good. Here's Randy and some more.
Hey, Dave, this is Randy, a.k.a. Billy Baru. Congratulations on 200 episodes. I just want to let you know how much Dopey has meant to me in my recovery. I discovered you guys 3 years ago online, and at that time I was in active addiction. And at that time, you guys provided me something to listen to, something to connect to, at a point where I was isolating a lot. Secondly, as I listened to you more and more, I began to believe that a person could live a fulfilling, fun, exciting lifestyle without the use of drugs or alcohol. And for that, I am eternally grateful. I'm sure a lot of people are grateful for what you do. I certainly am. So thank you so much.
Dave, this is Patrick from Don't Die, Wisconsin. Happy 200. Holy shit. That's a lot of podcasts. I was going to say happy 200 episodes of doing something great 200 times in a row besides banging dope, but let's be honest, not all 200 episodes are good. Maybe like 184 of them. But congratulations on all your hard work. Merry Christmas. Even though I never got to meet Chris, I learned a lot from him by listening to him, and I'm really proud of both of you guys. Congratulations on your 4 years in a row. Wow. You're the best. You're making a difference. You're helping people. Keep up the great work. I'm so proud of you. And mad love and respect to the Dopey Nation. And don't die, motherfuckers.
Hey Dopey, congrats on 200 episodes. It's Ellen here from Australia. I've written into the show before to talk about the impact that Dopey's had on me, and that it's the reason that I have a relationship with my dad again, who was a heroin addict for most of my life and is now 3 years clean. Dopey's also the reason that I'm slowly getting my own addicted ass towards sobriety. So thanks again, and toodles for Chris.
Hey Dave, it's Courtney. I just wanted to give you a shout out and to let you know I miss Chris and you're doing a great job continuing on with Dopey, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks. Toodles.
Boy, that's me doing a bad impression of Dave doing a bad impression of a Rasta. This is Jen, the dope smoking, pill popping, booger sugar sniffing social worker from NYC by way of Pittsburgh from the last episode. Just wanted to wish everyone a very happy Christmas. Chris, we miss you so much. Dopey has meant so much to me. It's helped me stay sober and feel less alone, knowing there are so many other fucking depraved, debaucherous drug fiends out there just like me. I needed this in my life, and I'm so grateful to hear everybody's stories. Big shout out to Amy Dresner, Dead Meth Owl Chick, Jeremy Turner, the Xanax Donut Store Blackout Chick, the Crackhead Lawyer, the Poughkeepsie Rockstar Guy, Hot Wheels, and all Yins guys. And most of all, props to Dave for 4 years of sobriety and for bringing us all together. I'm going to pour out some seltzer in honor of Chris, Todd, and all the other fallen members of the Dopey Nation. Maybe in our next lives we can do lots of drugs together without all of the consequences. Love you all. Stay strong. And toodles for Chris.
Wow. That last one just gives me the fucking chills.
Those are amazing.
Because I don't know if you know this about me, but like I'm very sentimental, but it takes a certain thing to really trigger the sentimental thing in me. It like if I watch a movie, I only cry like at the graduation or at like the moment where people care. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the moment that always gets me. You know what I mean? There's a lot of like bad things that happen and I kind of just can endure it. But when the people come together at the end, that for some reason triggers me.
Well, it's like how you always love the other more traditional Christmas like episodes of everything.
Right.
You love that kind of stuff.
I do.
Yeah.
And so I knew how much I would love the 200th episode, but when I started to hear from people and like that woman, Jen, who recounts all of these different, very specific things to the show, it really makes me feel something.
It's amazing. I mean, it's amazing.
But the real thing that whenever it happens is when I hear anybody mention Todd, I like die, you know, I had a funny Todd thought, but I can't think of it now. You were around Todd a bunch.
Yeah.
Any memories of Todd you'd like to share? Or is that putting you on the spot?
No, not at all. I'm just thinking. There was an early...
I know that Todd loved you. I know that Devan's just an incredibly warm and sweet and kind and brilliant guy, and he makes people happy to be around. If you walk around the Lower East Side with Devan, every person knows him because he works in schools down there, but he also has helped out all these families. So anybody that sees Devan is happy to see him, which is always very frustrating to me because I'm with him. I don't really like other people to show up. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, so like I know that Todd loved you being around because he knew you liked him and you made him feel that warm, nice thing.
After you guys became junkies, it became harder for me. Like I had this, this kind of warm, fuzzy, dummy kind of feeling around Todd, which he would play up, Well,
he was retarded. He would do retarded stuff all the time.
Then after you guys became junkies together, which was like when I lived in Istanbul for that year, right when I went to Istanbul, right before I moved to Istanbul, you had that breakup, and then I was there, and then when I came back, you and Todd had formed a heroin habit.
Yeah.
And then it was still snorting, and it was still, light enough, but like it was regular, and then it got deeper. And then after that, once you were once you moved to LA, basically, my feelings about Todd, it became more like, oh, Todd, you're gonna die because of Todd. Like, because every time you would relapse would be with Todd.
Yeah,
Todd would come around, and then you would dive down, and so that became a harder thing for me to have around him.
Right, it was less enjoyable to have Todd around.
But before that, I remember there's this moment when you and Jim were living on Norfolk Street.
Yeah.
And Todd was just smoking pot and doing cocaine.
It sounds right.
Right? And he really wanted to go buy some cocaine. And no one wanted to go with him. And I was like, I'll go with you, Todd, And so we go down, and he's like looking around and like asking people. And these kids, we were probably
20, 21.
22.
Yeah.
And these kids were maybe like younger. They were like 17, 18. And they see Todd with his like, big hippie beard, and his buddies all,
stupid Rasta hat.
He's like, hey, dude, you know where I can get any? And they're like, yeah, sure. Give me your money, and then over there in the on the tire of that car is where you'll find the blow. And Todd's like, okay. And I was like, wait, Todd, I don't know. He's like, no, it's fine. I do this all the time. And so he gives them the money, and they leave, and he goes over to this car, and there's nothing. There's nothing on the wheel. There's nothing there.
That doesn't sound.
This is very early on.
It had to have been.
So, and he was like, "Oh man, I can't believe that they did that."
Right. And so Todd got beat.
Yeah, it was sad.
Todd's got beat infinite times, but like I guess every time he would learn a little bit more. Mm-hmm. One story he never told, which was like the darkest time in Todd's life, and I was clean, and he like didn't want to tell me about the stuff he was doing because it was so crazy. But he told me he had befriended this crack dealer in Harlem, and he would live in her house. Because he lived on the Upper East Side, and he would just stay in her house. And this is so funny how far it came. She would go to the bathroom, and he would jump into her closet, open up her safe, and steal her drugs. So like he made up for whatever these kids stole on the Lower East Side. Uh-huh. And but it's crazy. It's crazy that he died, and it's
crazy.
With my dad talking about all the stuff that I didn't get away with, but this is something that I survived this thing for now, and I think the emotions are all very, very high for me around Todd and Chris. The Chris stuff is like it's still very built into weird sadness, anger, disappointment, and just like I don't like to accept the whole thing with him. With Todd, it's like my brother who died painfully, and I've tried to unpack the emotions of this a billion times already, and hopefully eventually I'll be able to. Now, interestingly enough, we heard from Dopey superfan, pioneer, Hot Wheels from fucking the Midwest someplace. I want to say Minnesota, but maybe Wisconsin. I think it's someplace out there. I should not say that. Hold on.
What's up, Dopey Nation? It's Hot Wheels calling in with that story that so many of you wanted to hear, and so many showed so much love during our loss over the Twitter. I didn't know that many people actually freaking cared. So let's see, what kind of story can I amuse you with? I want to make it a little dopey and also a little cautionary. So what I came up with was the night that I fucked up with Klonopin and heroin. It was in August, I think, before my spinal cord injury, and my buddy picked me up and my girlfriend to go to some fucking kegger in the city where it was. It really doesn't matter. No, I had 3 Klonopin, 3 bags of dope, and on the way there, the pills disappeared like any good addict form. 3 2-milligram Klonopin, fucking all at once. Gone like any good addict. No, I was never really a big drinker, but I had a few, and I tried to delegate my 3 bags of dope to make it last through however long the whole kegger was, which was probably just a feeble attempt. No, night went on. It was just a party, and then I don't know, disagreement with the girlfriend. She went her way, we went our separate ways, and that's just, I don't know, a dopier story, maybe something you get to hear sometime later, whatever. She's a dope. And I don't think I really relegated them bags of smack throughout the night. I probably just did them all at once, whatever. No. Well, long story short is, remember coming home and getting dropped off. I got out of the car, and everything seemed fine. I walked up the driveway. I remember that was fine. And then I got to the back door and pulled the keys out. And it was like, I don't know. I could not get the key in the hole in the door. I mean, it was like I never had sex before. You put the key in the slot, you turn it. What the hell? Like, I couldn't get in the house. Somehow I got in. And this is completely blacked out. And I used to do this thing when it was hot out where I'd open up the freezer for like a minute and just put my head down to cool off. And I think while I was doing that, I had this grand idea that, hey, you could halfway crawl on the bottom of the refrigerator, take a nap probably. So I dragged the kitchen table out in the backyard, all 4 chairs, and put it together all nice and neat and set it with the placemats and silverware, plates and everything, right down to the fucking fruit basket in the middle, just like it was in the kitchen. And while I was cleaning off the bottom shelf, through deductive reasoning, the next morning, I think I was using my butt crack to hold lit cigarettes while I was moving stuff out of the bottom of the refrigerator, because I woke up with the most massive burn across the top of my butt, like right where your butt cheeks start, where I couldn't sit down for like a week. Yes, I had to deal with who butt raped you jokes from all of my friends for like 3-4 days, and I couldn't even give him a good answer. Like, I couldn't tell him this story. Yeah, I got high and went to sleep in the refrigerator. I guess this is where, like, the real dopiness of the story comes in. Apparently, I did make it into the refrigerator and fall asleep because my mom found me sleeping in the refrigerator. But I didn't know this till the next morning when I woke up. I could never fall asleep with my socks and shoes and shit on. And jeans. So when I got up, and I was trying to get up, as soon as you pull that thing, that move where your feet hit the floor, and I looked down and was like, shoes, socks, I still got my pants on. The fuck went on last night here? So I was going upstairs thinking, man, what went on? What happened? I remember trying to get in the house. My mom was sitting there drinking coffee and looks me dead in the face and goes, what went on last night? I'm thinking, that's a really good question. Does she know something I don't? And then she tells me how she found me half in the refrigerator, questioning if I was alive or dead, dragged me out of it, and I guess I woke up and went downstairs and went to bed. And she had to bring in the kitchen table and all the chairs and put it back together. Yeah, I find this kind of funny. Well, thank God I didn't die, or I wouldn't be here to tell this story, to hopefully spread this message to somebody who might think that taking 3-Klonopin and doing some heroin is a good idea, because we ain't living in the 2000s anymore. Heroin ain't heroin. It's fentanyl. I've lost too many friends. We've lost Chris. No, it's just not the same game a lot of us got in playing. So those of you that are clean, awesome. Stick to what you're doing. Don't go back out. Those of you that are coming back out, going back in and going back out like I did, just keep doing it. Eventually it'll click, but watch yourself. Be careful. Don't mix these things. Don't use alone. Make sure there's Narcan somewhere. I just don't want any more of you guys dying from this disease. And I think that's the end of my recording, because I'm probably going to start crying. By the way, this took 10 times to record. So, I hope I got it to you quick enough, Dave. Sorry for the delay. Miss you, Chris, and love you all, Dopey Nation. Toodles.
That only took me 10 months to play.
That's a good one.
Maybe longer. That took me to play. That is Hot Wheels, Dopey Legend. Thank you for sending that in, and my apologies. And he was supposed to be on the thing, but it was his birthday when we were recording. And
Christmas?
Yeah, he was supposed to be on Christmas, but his birthday was right around Chris's birthday, I guess. Mm-hmm. I think the day before. Yeah. So, but I'm sure we will hear from... Happy birthday. And I'm sure we'll hear from him soon. Now, before you go, or before we go, I want to tell you this retarded thing that happened. This thought was a very stupid thought.
Give me.
I was home, and I was going to 7-Eleven to get cookies.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about not bringing my phone, for a second. I was thinking I was going to leave the phone. This is how addicted I am to the phone. That's the other thing that I'm fucking addicted to. I think to myself, I'm going to leave the phone here, and I'm going to go get cookies. But the thought I have is, what if something happens to me on my way to 7-Eleven, like I pass out behind the wheel or I get hit by a car or something.
Right.
When the ambulance comes, what am I going to do for all that time in the ambulance and in the hospital?
Not like how to connect to how to
Right. Just the idea of sitting alone without the phone, it was just terrorizing to me.
Yeah.
You know, how funny is that?
It's really funny.
It's a funny thought.
Yeah.
You got stuck without a phone for weeks recently, right?
Well, just a week.
Right.
Well,
and how was that?
It was fine. Well, it was hard because I wanted to be in touch with, with Rach, with my daughter, like that kind of thing. But
what's the real reason why that it was hard to not have the phone?
Well, that, and it was right when Nick free agency was about to happen, and so I needed to also find out what was going to happen there. But there was one. I was in remote Nova Scotia, and there was no cell service. And in this like little cottage, there was no phone and internet for the week. So, but there was one tiny corner of the porch where you could get like a bar sometimes. And so I would go there, check in with my fam, and then try and download all the articles that I could, and then bring it back in. And it was also weirdly cold during that week, and so
you're shivering.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, what's going to happen?
Well, that's another thing that Devan and I share is this terrible obsession with the Knicks.
It's terrible.
I honestly, this is my phone life. I look at Dopey stats. I look at Dopey emails. I look at work emails. I look at Dopey social media. I have to do all of the work social media. Right. So that's those 5 things.
But they're all like one thing, kind of. It's all like Dopey and work.
Right, but it's just constant scrolling between these different things. And then when I'm done with that, I just, there's a button on my phone that I've created that just says Knicks News. And I hit the button and I want to see if the article is refreshed. And all these bullshit websites, they're like, let's explore the David Lee sign and trade of 1997 or whatever it was. I hate those clickbait sites for people like me who are obsessed with Knicks news. Right. Disgusts me. The only thing that disgusts me more than that is the Knicks themselves.
The actual Knicks. But maybe we're in a good moment. Let's not go into a whole Knicks wormhole right now because I've got a lot to say.
Well, I think we're going to call it a shorty, and we'll call it the addendum to the 200th episode, and we will call it the time Devan and I almost became famous on MTV.
For next time I come in, just to put a bookmark. There are a couple of stories I think we should talk about at some point. I think that the Ibogaine, you doing Ibogaine to try and kick story is worth telling.
I feel we didn't tell that story when you were on. I think we did.
You think we did?
Yeah.
All right.
I know I've told the actual Ibogaine story 3 times at least.
So then,
but I'll tell. That's one of my favorite stories. I'll tell it again.
What else? I think we should talk about my dad because, I'm not afflicted, but I grew up with a father who's an addict, and he just died last fall. And Davey knows him, so I think that it would be worthwhile. And
well, how much
Dave's
of an addict?
died.
How much of an addict do you think he was? That's the reason. That's the reason I didn't want it to get into it because I wasn't certain, how much you consider him an addict.
My dad was an addict. One of his main slogan is "More is more."
Wow.
Yeah.
He was a pioneer. Devan's father was so out there in so many ways. He just he seemed more like just a larger than life character and somebody who was on the spectrum of mental illness. And I say that with all respect and love. And I love Devan's dad. And me and Devan's dad had a great loving bond.
Yeah. So I think we should. I think it would be worth talking about that. And parents dying. Always good times. And then there was a third thing. Oh, when we took acid for the first time, and which was I think maybe our first real both of our first real drug use before.
I feel like we told that story the first time too. But yeah,
maybe we did.
But yeah, we went to Madison Square Garden, and we went to see the Grateful Dead, kind of with just the plan to take acid.
Only to take acid there, because neither of us listened to that. But we were like, oh, that'll be like a nice safe space to go find and take our first acid.
Well, we could actually, the logic was we could buy acid from hippies as opposed to like who knows who in Washington Square Park.
Which we ended up doing so many times, or in Central Park.
Yeah. Well, in Central Park, I felt like we bought it from hippies. In Washington Square Park, not so much.
Sure.
Anyway,
but you just
the one story I think we should unbookmark for a second is with your pop.
Then we have to. I think we should save it. We have to go.
Just tell the Paint It Black story real quick.
No.
Really? What do you mean? No? Yeah, just give it to them at the end. Yeah.
All right. So, my parents grew up in Brooklyn. We're hippies. They were in especially my dad. My mom was kind of, along for the ride a little bit. But my dad was all in. And what album is Paint It Black on?
I think Aftermath.
So that comes out, which is when?
I don't know, 1967 or 66.
That album comes out, and my dad gets it immediately and is taking acid and listening to it, and Paint It Black comes on, and he's like, yes, this is what we must do. This is what we're going to do. And so they go out, and I think maybe he had some friends over. What did you find the year?
I don't know. I know.
They were born in 45, both my parents. So however old they were when that happened, 22, 23. They were in like their first, one of their first apartments. My parents met in 10th grade in 10th grade high school in Coney Island. So they get buckets of black paint and they paint their entire apartment black. The furniture, all the wood furniture, the walls,
the fruit,
and there's listening to it over and over on record. So like putting the 1969.
It says it's on Let It Bleed, but I don't feel like it is on.
It's
Let
not
It
on
Bleed.
Let It Bleed.
I don't know what it's on. It doesn't matter. This is the kind of detail you're not supposed to quibble about.
I'm not quibbling. You were like typing.
I know. I'm trying to find out when Paint It Black is from.
Anyway, that is a little bit of insight.
But did they painted the fridge? I was right. Yeah. It was Aftermath.
Yeah, they painted
1966. I was right in the first minute.
They painted the tables, the walls, the furniture. But did they really fridge? They painted black. Black is night. Black is coal.
Did they really?
I don't think they painted over the windows, but I know that they had like some plexiglass things that were painted, and then like the next weeks and weeks, my mom was like, "What? This is probably not the best idea."
That's so funny. Did they really paint the fruit though? Were the apples black?
No, I don't think so.
Oh well. Anyway, I love that story, and I think we finished it on an up note, which I love. And so we'll say, stay strong, Dopey Nation.
And fucking toodles for Chris.
And fucking toodles for Chris. So you think the show is going to end, but then it doesn't end. And the addendum to the 200th episode has an addendum in itself. So this is the addendum to the addendum. And basically, if you say the word addendum a lot of times, it doesn't sound right anymore. Addendum. It sounds like some kind of dental procedure. But the end of the show, I wanted to play more of those voicemails because I love them, and there were so many that I didn't get to. Now, I just want to be clear, that means I will play a bunch of fucking voicemails, and I'll still not get to yours probably, so please don't hold it against me. But here are a couple more voicemails before we go, and before that, I just want to remind you guys that on October 12th, it's DopeyCon. And DopeyCon is going to be a storytelling festival in New York City in the spirit of Dopey. So send in your best Dopey story on drugs, addiction, or dumb shit, or all three, or recovery. Make it funny, make it compelling, make it under 10 minutes, and send it to dopeypodcast@gmail.com. If you can't come to DopeyCon, maybe I'll just use it as a voicemail. But send them and let me know if you're going to come to DopeyCon. I'm not counting on any of you guys to come. Well, here are some voicemails and the end of the show again. And Mountainside has been kind of tight-lipped about the exact location of DopeyCon, but I'll tell you this, it will be on the west side of Manhattan, somewhere between 14th Street and 20th Street. And we'll leave it at that. Find a cheap place to stay, though. And all right, and before we go, this woman, Alyssa, wrote me on Instagram that her boyfriend, Anthony, is a huge Dopey fan. So we're going to wish Anthony a very special birthday on the 27th. All right? Anthony, happy fucking birthday. You better hopefully listen to this. All right. Stay strong, Dopey Nation, and fucking toodles for Chris. Here's some voicemails, and goodbye.
Hey, Dave. Just sending in that voice memo again. Dopey has helped me through my sobriety. It still does. And it's like the NA that you're not supposed to talk about when you're there. So sometimes it's just fun to make jokes about how shitty our past is instead of taking everything so fucking seriously all the time. Thanks.
Hello, Dave. Hello, Dopey Nation. It's Mick here from the Hong Kong story. Happy Christmas. Happy 200th episode. Keep doing what you're doing, mate, because I know it means an awful lot to a lot of people. Stay strong, Dopey Nation, and fucking toodles for Chris. Love you all. Bye.
What Dopey means to me is greater than Chris and Dave's harmonies. I heard it first when I was still a user, but right now somehow I'm not, and feeling much less of a loser. I remember withdrawing on the floor, mumbling along to I Wanna Be Good So Bad between lulls of spider crawls. Praying for that day I could have belly laughs like Chris and like Dave. Through dozens of relapses and uncomfortable meetings, I had this secret podcast that helped lighten my feelings. Was I in love with Chris or was I Chris? My ADHD and SMI can only scratch the surface for what I felt for this guy. And Dave, without reservation, has kept the Dopey Nation together and expanding through some unholy revelations. Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Chris, for keeping me company and for putting the idea in my head of what it means to be truly free. Toodles.
Dave, happy 200th episode. What an achievement. I love Dopey because it's my own dirty little secret. I start my day with my coffee, listening to Dopey while I put my makeup on and get ready for my day. It's my morning fix. I just love listening to older episodes with you guys together. It for sure warms my heart, but breaks my heart at the same time that Chris is not here to experience and enjoy, the full wrath of what Dopey has become. No doubt he's proud and he knows what's going on. We love you, Chris. We miss you. Stay strong, Dopey Nation, and fucking toodles for Chris.
Hey, Dave. Congratulations on 200 episodes. This is Tommy from Long Island. I just got 1 year clean from coke and dope. I couldn't have done it without you. Stay strong, Dopey Nation.
Hey, Dave. Hey, Dopey Nation. Happy 200th episode. I can't believe it's been so many, and I can't believe it's been so few. And Merry Christmas, if you can say it's Merry. It's wonderful to remember Chris and to think of the legacy that he left behind and the way he really and truly carried the message. Dave, I want to thank you for the way you open up to us every single week on Dopey and let us into your life and your thoughts, and you're so authentic, and we all appreciate that. And I think that it's helped us in the Dopey Nation to be authentic with one another and to create an amazing, amazing community. So thank you for that. And thank you, Linda. Thank you, Annie. Thank you, Alan. I'm so proud to be a part of this community. And that's it. Stay strong, Dopey Nation, and fucking toodles.
Awee-mo-whip. Happy birthday, Chris. Toodles to you.
Do you know the lion sleeps tonight?
In the jungle.
Do you want to do the bottom part or the top part?
The lion sleeps tonight.
You want to do the bottom part?
I'm bottom. I can't do top. The top.
You know the bottom part?
Yeah, in the jungle.
No, it goes.
Okay. All right. I'll do that. Okay. That gave me a nice little rush last time. The baby back. I feel like it's a similar tone.
Yeah. All right.
All right. A whim away, a whim away, a whim away.
No.
What?
He goes, a whim away, a whim away, a whim away, a whim away, a whim away.
Okay, all right, I got it.
A whim away, a whim away.
Okay. A whim away, a whim away, a whim away. Okay, tell me how it goes again.
A whim away, a whim away, a whim away, a whim away.
Okay, so it'll go down. Okay.
A whim away, a whim away, a whim away, a whim away, a whim away.
Okay, but if let's say I fuck it up and I just keep doing whim away.
Why don't you do the in the jungle part?
I don't know all the words. I just know in the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight.
That's enough. That'll be fine.
Okay.
A whim away, 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 a whim away,
in the jungle. Hey, I'll do the whim away. I can't.
You can do the progression?
Yeah. I can't do the progression. I'm just going to whim away.
You have to do the progression.
All right, I'll try. All right.
In the jungle.
A whim away, 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 a whim away.
No, go ahead. You have to go to the result.
Just fucking let me do what I'm doing, and then you come in. It'll work either way.
Or it won't work.
Yeah. A whim away, 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 a whim away. A whim.
Way up the wall.
Did you see The Lion King?
I did. I saw the movie finally with my.
Oh, did you see the play?
No.
Yeah, see the play. Actually, I didn't even like it that much. Dude, they say that in The Lion King there's some sort of like.
I want to take a walk around the world. I wonder would it do me any good? Until I get some money in my pocket, then I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood. But I want to be good so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And I want to take a ride up in the sky. Watch as aeroplanes just pass me by. And I want to see a Lear jetliner take a dive, just to show all of these people what it means to be alive. But I want to be good so bad. Want to be so good, so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And my shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. Shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. And I wonder would they pay it any mind when I leave this busted city far behind. I'll take the high road, however far it winds, because peace and love are very, very, very hard to find. And I want to be good so bad. Want to be good so bad, so bad. I want to be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. Damn it, all these suckers make me mad. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And these suckers make me mad, and I want to call my dad. And it's all I ever had. 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 And these suckers make me mad, and it's all I ever had. And I want to call my dad. And it's all I